What's up guys, John Simmons here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of our Pro Audio series. Before we get into today's video, I do want to ask you to click the subscribe button. That really helps out the channel. And if you want to see more videos like today, be sure to hit the notification bell so you'll get notified every single time there's a new post uploaded. I do want to say a big thank you to you guys. You are really loving this Pro Audio series. The last video that I did on the Pro Audio larger format rig is on track to break my video record. Right now it's at 20,000 views in just under 5 days, and I have no one to thank but you guys. So thank you so much. Subscribe, share with your friends, and let's hop into today's episode. Now last week we talked about the larger scale PA, which is the JBL VRX 932s. Subwoofers, we have JBL STX 828s, and then we have a bunch of EV power and DBX processing. Now you can't get the audio signal to the PA without talking about your console of choice. Now I am going to start off by saying all audio consoles allow you to basically do the same thing. They take whatever input you have, whether it be an instrument microphone or a regular microphone, audio tracks, what have you. They're going to take that and allow you to control it and send to your PA. But I am going to say there's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different consoles of choice that you could use. In today's time, you may hear the word digital console thrown out a lot. What that's going to allow you to do is save multiple scenes on one console or communicate between two different consoles using a Cat5 or Cat6 Ethernet cable. But back in the day, they had analog consoles, which are still highly sought after and used today to some extent. I have two X32 consoles that allow me to send up to 48 inputs through my PA and send out 16 channels of monitor or bus outputs. Now analog mixers still have a place in today's digital era, even starting with something small like this, a simple 6-channel Yamaha mixer with balanced XLR outputs. I use this thing all the time for simple speaking engagements where they simply need a microphone and some music. This thing comes in super duper handy, and it's even got some built-in effects, which back in the day you would have to have a complete outboard processing unit just to do what you could out of this. Now when you talk about Pro Audio, you're going to need something with more than 6 inputs and definitely something with more than 2 mic pre's on it. Starting out, you want to have something at a minimum, I would say, to 6 to 8 inputs. That's going to allow you to control an acoustic guitar, a couple of microphones, maybe one for a performer, 1 or 2 for a performer, and then a third one for an MC mic. And then you want to have a couple line inputs where you can control things like music or direct to mixer instruments. Now when getting into Pro Audio, you're going to want something definitely with more than 6 inputs, and for sure something that has more than 2 mic pre's. That Yamaha mixer is simply for small speaking engagements only. I would say the minimum of something you're going to want is going to have 12 inputs with at least 6 mic pre's. That's going to allow you to run a couple instruments, a couple microphones, and all the music sources that you're going to use, such as an iPad or running direct from a computer. You're going to want something like this unit here. It's got 10 dedicated mic pre inputs, so you can control a lot more than that simple one that we looked at beforehand. It also has built-in digital effects, a high, mid, and low EQ with sweepable mids, and a couple auxiliaries. That way you can run a few monitors. It still has the analog feel and look to it, allowing you to control everything from a solid piece of hardware. What you plug in is what you get out of it. There's no digital conversions or any of that. It's simple, it's easy, and a lot of people still want them. If you are just getting started, I would recommend something like this to get started on because it has a really simple learning curve. Once you get into using digital consoles, there's a lot that can be found online, but it's very easy to get lost while you're on the job. So something like an analog desk is where you should start. Now, if you're shopping around for an analog desk, depending on what you're actually looking for, some can be had for really, really cheap. When looking for one, simply try to find something that's going to suit your needs. I would say get something that is bigger than what you intend to run temporarily. I would say if you're only looking for something that's going to have 3 or 4 mic inputs and a couple inputs where you can do audio from a computer or a music source, that only adds up to about 6 channels. I would say double that channel source, get a 12 12 channel mixer just so you have room for growth. And that is where analog mixers simply start to die out. The more channels you add, the bigger and bulkier they become, and that's why people start to switch over to a digital platform such as the Behringer XR18, which I have as well. Now, if you want to talk about a super versatile mixer, this here is definitely going to be it. And it's simply not a mixer. You don't see any knobs, you don't see any faders on it. That's because you control it 100% via the iPad or Android app. Now, when getting into the digital era, this is actually one of the first digital units that I bought, and it has simply been a game changer in how I go about doing my smaller gigs. This is the Behringer XR18, and what it allows me to do is have 16 mic pre's as well as 2 line-in inputs and 6 auxiliary outputs, so you can mix a full band simply off of this mixer. And with the integrated app, you can control everything from there. Now, that would be a con to some people, not being able to have knobs and faders in front of them and mix on the fly essentially, but the iPad app is super easy to navigate, and there's also a Windows-based platform that you can use from a home computer. Another pro for this is that you can hook this up to a standard DAW recording software, so you can almost use this as another recording suite to capture all of your files in your home studio or your office if you're doing voiceover work or something in the like. It's got a built-in router that creates its own Wi-Fi signal that your iPad internally hooks up to. I don't recommend that though. I recommend getting a standalone router. That way you can hook up a good professional router and get plenty of distance out of it for whatever job you need, especially if you're in crowded places like nightclubs. I can't tell you how great this little mixer is. It's so fantastic. I actually own 2 of them, and they both get used all the time. I really can't begin to tell you how great these little mixers are. As you can see, I've got it in a 10-space rack with a power conditioner, a dual microphone, and I've even got a space down here at the bottom that I could add something else. It's in a simple Rode case, and you've got a loaded mixing PA system from here. You throw in a couple powered speakers, a couple wedges, and there you go. There's no big, bulky, heavy analog console to drag around. This thing is awesome. The one thing that makes this mixer so powerful and so valuable is what it can do straight out of the box. It's got a platform that's very similar to the X32, and the fact that you've got all of the EQ curve settings, all of the compressors, the gates, the effects, all of this stuff that back in the day you would have had to take out a bunch of outboard gear to duplicate. Now, I'm going to say that this mixer isn't great. It does have some pros and cons, but it's a give and take depending on what you need. I found it to be very resourceful in my getting into the live sound field. Now, when you outgrow something like the XR18, obviously the next step up is an actual physical desk. Now, you can go in a lot of different ways, and before I even tell you what I have, I will tell you that there is a lot of great options out there from a lot of great different brands. You have things on the beginner tier, such as the Behringer X32, which I have. There's also Soundcraft, there's Avid, there's Yamaha, there's Digico, there's Midas. Believe me, the list goes on, and it only gets more expensive the better name you get and the more channel inputs you get. Now, I've got 2 of the Behringer X32s. What it allows me to do is have a dedicated front of house and monitor position. That way we don't have to crosstalk in between the desks. Once you set one person to the monitors, they're controlling their console as if it's its own independent console. The same goes for front of house. The Behringer X32 gets a lot of hate, and sometimes deserving so. It's not the greatest console out there, nor does it sound the best, but it's essentially a $2,500 console, and for what you get out of it, it's really hard to beat. And for the market that I'm in that calls for something like this console, I'm not fulfilling riders that require an SC48 or a Digico console or Midas Pro 2. Now, the good thing about all of the desks that I just mentioned is I can rent any of them from my local friends in the business, and that's really what you need to develop. Judging from a lot of the questions on the last video that we shot, you guys are interested in going out and buying a bunch of this gear. Until you are ready, I highly recommend renting or sub-renting in or subcontracting in another company that has the equipment that can get the job done. The last thing you want to do is go out and drop a whole bunch of money on equipment that you only use once or twice a year, which is why I say either subcontract it to someone else or rent the gear in until you can afford to buy your own, or until you can at least get the jobs to justify going out and buying the gear. Now the cool thing about the Behringer X32 is it's got 32 available on-board mic preamps with 16 outputs. I believe this console is essentially what kept Behringer in the pro game world. Before this console came out, Behringer was really on the decline and was considered entry-level garbage, but you would be surprised how many riders these things are friendly for, just because they're super simple to navigate. As with the XR18, you can control these consoles with an iPad. That makes it super great. If you only have one console, you can leave it in monitor world and you can give your front of house guy the iPad. It's really kind of easier to dial your mix in or dial your pre-mix in with the console, and then you can walk out front and get the rest of the mix from there. Just having the knobs and faders is nice, which is why it's such an upgrade from something like the XR18. Once you get into the shows where a dedicated front of house and monitor position are needed, that's probably when you need to invest in two consoles again, which is why I chose the X32. Because they're so cheap, it allows me to have multiples that I can send out at any given time or at the same show. Once you step into getting two consoles, you have to get two that match, so just be thinking about that as you're talking about your operating costs going forward. If you buy a $25,000 Pro 2, chances are you're going to have to buy another $25,000 Pro 2 just to have them crosstalk. Now that's not always the case. We've been on several shows where let's say an Avid SC48 is used for the front of house desk, and they use a split snake to split the signals, and they use an X32 for monitors, just because the monitor mixes don't have to sound as good or as clean as the front of house position. They're willing to give up a little to gain a lot, which is the price tag and the travel factor. A lot of the consoles that are upgrades from X32 and the like are a lot bigger in size as well. If you get a Midas Pro 2 or an SC48, you're not only talking about lugging around the console, you're talking about a pretty good size case that the thing has to sit in to protect your investment. So all of these are ideas you need to be thinking about when investing in your console of choice. So we have our PA and we have our audio desk. The crowd or the audience can hear everything that's coming out. You have an audio desk to mix what is coming out, but then you get into what about the band? The band needs to be able to hear themselves on stage, which is why we use monitors. There's two types of monitors. There are wedges, floor monitors that you put on the stage. They're actual speakers that produce the sound that they want in that particular wedge. And then there's in-ear monitors, which are essentially earbuds. There's wireless in-ear monitors and there's wired in-ear monitors. Wireless is the most expensive, but it probably has the most pros out of all three, because when you go wireless, you eliminate all of your on-stage volume, which also helps to eliminate things such as feedback from mics into wedges and things of that nature. They definitely have the most pros, but they're also the most expensive. Wireless has the most pros out of all three, but they're also probably the most expensive. You're talking about a very beginner, professional, entry-level wireless pack and transmitter. It's going to cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500. You get an average of 6 to 8 people on stage. The cost can really add up really fast, and the one thing about those wireless units is you can't really, that's all you can use them for, which is why I have stage monitors. Stage monitors are basically speakers. I come from a DJ company, so I have a ton of them. It works out great for me. All of my speakers are EV-EKX. I have 8 of them, which I can use for stage monitors, and it works out so well because being a DJ company first, growing into a sound company, they've had many uses and can go out for many different things. I can send them out on a rental, I can send them out with a DJ, and when it's time to throw a big stage, I don't have to buy in or rent in monitors, because the speakers that I have, I can also use for stage monitors. There's a sweet Porsche that just went by. But again, even these speakers still cost a lot of money, but they would definitely go out, at least in my case, more than wireless in-ear packs, which is why I chose to go that route instead of going the wireless route. The wireless route, however, is coming in the very near future. And once you get to the really big stages or certain acts, they're gonna ask you if you can provide Sidefields. Sidefields are essentially a fill-in speaker setting for the stage itself. It's not an individual monitor. It's not the PA that's going out front. It's just filling in the sound on the stage. That way the musician can have a mix of some sort at any point in time while they're on the stage. For those, I also use the 15-inch monitors, but I couple them with a pair of single 18s or dual 18s if we have them available. Now, it doesn't have to be said, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. With all of the stuff that you buy, including your PA, your monitors, your consoles, whatever it is, there's always some ancillary stuff behind it that's probably going to cost you some money too. As I've been growing with my live sound production DJ company, I've noticed that it's not the big stuff that can hurt you in the long run. It's a lot of the small stuff. Being able to power these consoles and having enough power for your rig, that way you can run consoles and PA and lights and things of that nature. Stuff like that gets really, really expensive. I've got way more money in copper for my feeder cable and my AC cable and things of that nature than I do probably in my consoles and my monitors. So be thinking about that. Just because I'm showing you the hard items, you've always got something behind it that's going to cost you in the long run. All right, just to wrap things up, last week we discussed the main PA, which are the speakers, the subs, and the amp racks. That cost is right here. That's the total cost of what I have invested in that equipment. For today's segment, talking about our consoles and our monitors, we're going to add up the 8 wedges that we have, the single 18s and the dual 18s that we sometimes use for side fields on the stage. We're going to add in our 2 audio consoles as well as the 2 XR18 consoles, because I think they're such a vital piece to our live sound operation. That cost added to last week's cost gives us a grand total of this. So as you can see, it's not the cheapest thing to get into, but there is money to be made if you're willing to invest the money and put in the work. That's it for today's episode. On our next episode, we're going to talk about things like our microphones and our cabling. How much you need, how much you need to buy, what are the links that you need to buy, what are the mics you need to buy, so on and so forth. That's going to be episode 3 in our series on Pro Audio. If you haven't already subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, and while you do, go ahead and ring the notification bell. That way you know every time new content is posted. We're going to bring you more content on Pro Audio, and then at the very end we're going to tally it all together just to see how much it's going to take you to get to where I am, which again is not anywhere near companies like Elite Multimedia or Rat Sound, some of the major players in the game. I'm just a small guy on the totem pole. If you got a question or two that needs to be answered, send me an email, djwoopig@gmail.com. I promise you I will get back to you just as soon as I can. If you want to, follow me on social media. That's where you can see a lot of the behind the scenes content. You can see all of this equipment be put to use on various jobs that we are at. That's at djwoopig. You can also follow my company Instagram just to see where we're up to at Crown Entertainment on Instagram. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm John Simmons, and we'll see you next time.